Hello there, I'm Tolulope Ogunjobi. Welcome to Business Tonight. The top stories. Nigeria moves up 24 places in World Bank doing a business report. Federation accounts records $2 billion VAT revenue in 10 months. Zimbabwe's independent power producer secures $51 million from a Chinese state-owned firm. And Eurozone growth exceeds expectations in third quarter. Glad to have you join us now. Nigeria has moved up 24 places to 145th in the World Bank's Doing Business report. For the first time, the country is recognized as one of the top 10 most improved economies in the world. Reacting to the report, Vice President Yemi Oshibajo says the target was to move 20 places up in the ranking, but he is delighted that the move exceeded expectations. The Vice President stressed that government is reinforcing our economic turnaround by vigorous and active implementation of the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan, ERGP, so businesses operating in Nigeria can thrive and be competitive globally. The World Bank Doing Business projects provides objective measures of business regulations and their enforcement across 190 economies worldwide. Nigeria's Federation accounts recorded a total revenue inflow of more than $2 billion from value-added tax between January and October. Minister of Finance Kemi Adeosun, who released the details, says the highest VAT collection was achieved last month and the lowest was in March. The framework under which the VAT is administered allows the federal government to get 15% of VAT revenue, while the states and local governments receive 50% and 35% respectively. The federal government says it is committed to growing the tax revenue base, and it will ensure that the private sector and ministries, are tax compliant. The International Monetary Fund (IMF) has advised Nigerian government to urgently revisit tax holidays and exemptions given to companies. Senior resident representatives and mission chief for Nigeria African Department (IMF) Amin Imati says the government needs to reduce interest payments on borrowed funds to about 30% of the country's revenue. The Washington-based funds also asked the government to increase taxes imposed on tobacco and alcohol for social responsible fiscal adjustment based on revenue mobilization. Successive governments had granted controversial tax holidays and waivers, which were described as forms of corruption. The central bank also says Nigerian external reserves currently stand at $34 billion. That's about $400 million more than the figure as at October the 25th, that's last week. Well, to discuss all of this, I have Head Research FSDH Merchant Bank, Ayo Akinwunmi, is in the studio to talk more on this. Ayo, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much for having me tonight, Tolu.
I'm going to start with Nigeria moving 24 places upwards. Well, to me, it's a cherry news. It was in the news, business news, and we all took it up. Like, what do you make of this development?
Thank you very much. I think it's good news, like you mentioned earlier. In absolute terms, it's good news. We moved from 169 to 145. But in relative terms, I'm not sure. I think we still have a long way to go. Okay. Ghana, for instance, is at 120. South Africa is about at 82. So if we are at 145, yes, a lot of improvements. The World Bank says we are one of the top economies that improved most in this year. That's good, and it also is an endorsement. I mean, just like an endorsement of the policies that the federal government has put in place to ease business environment in Nigeria, to ensure that businesses, the Nigerian environment becomes, more business friendly in terms of for both local investors and foreign investors, which for me I think is good. Is going to ensure that more investors will come to Nigeria. But then, like I mentioned, when you look at the countries around us that we are competing with, Ghana is at 120, South Africa is 120. I think it's a lot. I mean, at 82. Is a lot of work that we need to do, particularly if we look at the area of getting electricity, which is at about 172, registering property 179, And trading across borders, Nigeria is currently trying to see how we can create structures to encourage export-led sectors of the Nigerian economy. And therefore, if we are at about 182 out of 190, I think federal government need a lot of work to in that area to encourage businesses.
But in one way or the other, clearly, that means some of these policies are paying off. Let's look at Forex, for example. At least for some time now, there's been a little bit of stability in the polity. We've been hovering between 350, that's in the black market. Yeah. And the availability, the CBN has continued to pump in Forex, and they say they can sustain this. So clearly, does it mean that some of these policies are really working?
No, there is no doubt about it. Some of the policies that the central bank has put in place are working. The federal government are also encouraging businesses. They are working. And that's why we are able to move 24 points higher. But I am saying that a lot of work still needs to be done for us to be very competitive, both across the globe and even in West African countries. In Africa, we are the largest economy in Africa. So when foreign investors are coming to Africa, they are looking at Nigeria first, they are looking at South Africa, but then they will look at this index, the ease of doing business, how friendly is the environment, regulatory-wise and otherwise, to ensure that there is protection of property, there is their business they're going to do here, the environment will be friendly enough for them to ensure they have good return on their investment. These are the things that foreign investors will be looking at, even local investors, before they can take long-term investment decisions in Nigeria and committing huge amount of money here. So I think more work still needs to be done.
It reminds me of this, the CBN projecting that by mid-next year, inflation should drop to like 9%. That's what the CBN governor said in the UK, I think last week. Some of this projection is basically based on the fact that we're looking at food production, that there might be harvest, a lot of bumper harvest, and the price of food might drop. That's the challenge we've had with inflation. Now it's dropping, price of foodstuffs still on the high side. But I look at this as an uphill tax, 9%. Do you see that? Is it visible?
You remember that last year we were in single digit, last year January, until we began to go up when there was an adjustment of electricity tariff, there was an adjustment of fuel and devaluation of the currency. Now, our projection FHS research aligns with that, sometimes mid-next year, we may likely have single-digit inflation, all things being equal, because there are two important prices that we think that the federal government needs to adjust very shortly for us to move forward. And if those two prices are adjusted, it means that inflation may pick up a little bit, but then it will encourage investment in those sectors. Number one, the electricity, which we talked about in this place, power. Now, the current tariff we have in that sector is not cost reflective. They need to adjust the tariff if it is adjusted upward, because all the parameters with which we have the MITO 2 that we have at the moment, we have exceeded them in terms of the exchange rate, in terms of the inflation rate and gas prices. They are no longer in line with reality. Number two, the PMS oil, the PMS pump price. Now, today, we have burning light trading at about $60 per barrel. We have exchange rates at 305, and I assume that it is because of that PMS price that we have the exchange rate at the official window at about 305. Nobody, Central Bank has developed the importer and exporters window, foreign exchange window, to encourage exporters and encourage, foreign investors who want to bring in money to Nigeria. And that rate is about 360 now. The IMF has come up to say we need to harmonize all the exchange rates we have. NIFES is around that level also. So we have 305, 360, and about 365. That needs to be done. And if that is done, we will not be able to have the PMS price at 145 we have at the moment. Or we still have it at 145, but with huge, fuel subsidy again. So those two prices need to be adjusted. If they are adjusted, it's difficult for government to adjust it pre-election year. But then, if they are adjusted, inflation will likely pick up a little bit. But with food increase in production of food. We are told now very soon that the price of rice will come down. There has been a lot of production, increased production and productivity in that sector. If we are able to do that and we are growing the food that we are producing in Nigeria here and we are immune from external shocks, we may likely have single-digit inflation rate. Our forecast for average inflation rate for next year is about 10.9 thereabout. IMF is saying we're going to be about maybe 14% thereabout. Even the federal government itself is forecasting about 12% thereabout. But then, if we move from the level of 15% now to that level, I think it's a lot of improvement that we have, and we are going to have some level of stability in prices.
It is really a step. Now, the IMF again now says Nigeria should revisit tax holidays and exemptions, saying there's been a little bit of corruption. I think not to really understand what is meant. I thought this will attract investors, and when we stop it, are we not going to shut them down again?
I think IMF has reasonable basis to make that recommendation. If you, this week we published, FF State Research, we published a report where we are talking about resolving the problems of the low revenue generation in Nigeria. We compare Nigeria using IMF data, Nigeria, the ratio of revenue to GDP, about 11 countries. We realized that Nigerian have, from 2010 to 2006, Nigeria recorded the lowest revenue to GDP ratio. If we look at tax revenue to GDP ratio also, Nigeria is hovering around 5 to 6%, one of the lowest in the world. Ghana is higher than Nigeria. South Africa is higher than Nigeria. And Kenya is higher than Nigeria in that area. We are almost at par with the country like Iran. We need, a lot of factors are responsible for this anyway. Weak infrastructure, weak institution, leakages, corruption, right? So if IMF is saying reduce the tax holiday, remove them, they may be looking at the fact that we need to increase our revenue generation. However, I think that in implementing policies, we need to take into consideration our local environment, our local peculiarities. We have a structure in Nigeria whereby infrastructure are very weak, and government is using these policies, fiscal policies, to encourage investment in Nigerian economy. About a few years ago, Nigeria was net importer of cement to this country. But through fiscal measures, today we are now net exporter of cement. So saving Nigerian a lot of hard-earned foreign exchange, creating jobs, both direct and indirect job creation. So that's what federal government is trying to do at the moment. And I think that we may not be able to reduce those incentive tax holiday to encourage investment because of the weak infrastructure which a lot of companies are producing, are having to bear themselves, lowering the burden of doing business in Nigeria. And I think still coming together to ease the business, ease of doing business in Nigeria. And I think so. IMF is saying that because of the weak income generation, but then federal government is putting all those things in place to ensure that, to encourage investment in Nigeria, to create job and to earn revenue. And if we can grow the revenue base, the tax base, very shortly we may likely overcome the current situation that we have found ourselves.
Akinwunmi, Head Research, FSDH Merchant Bank. I must thank you for insight into these topics and these issues on Business Tonight today.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us. Well, we will take a break now and we'll be back with more on Business Tonight. Stay with us, the show continues shortly. You're watching Business Tonight. Now, the Lagos Court of Arbitration, in collaboration with the Center for Policy Initiatives, wants traditional institutions to step in as agents of reason to help Nigeria secure its investments. Such help, according to the bodies, will guarantee a soft but integral part of economic development process. We have details in this report.
In Nigeria fell by as much as $4.5 billion in 2016 to $5.12 billion, the lowest in 9 years. While the global economy has seen investors shifting attention into countries with high prospects, Nigeria has suffered a decline caused mostly by restiveness in areas responsible for its driving revenue earner, oil. Which is why this policy dialogue focused on harmonizing traditional conflict resolution as a mechanism for economic recovery for the country.
Traditional methods of conflict resolution have a lot to offer because they are based on conciliation and compromise within the community, because within every community, everybody is interrelated. Yeah, so you don't need to destroy the organic relationship within the community. The English law, the English approach to conflict resolution is more of a winner-take-all. So there's a winner and there's a loser, but the bitterness still remains. And I think we have to rely more on our own time-tested traditional methods.
We have to have peace and security. That is key. Because if you do not have peace and security, you can't have FDI, foreign direct investment. And you need that to be able to propel people and energize the polity. So that's why all emphasis must be placed on organizing the polity.
Discussants identified how traditional institutions can help to provide the environment that allows businesses operate unhindered.
In Nigeria, traditions are extremely valuable to the people. People take them close to their hearts, and we are many. 300 also different peoples, tribes, and so on, each with its own tradition. So you can see if we just go by the international standard only, many people will be out of it. But if you harmonize the two, then you can, that is, inclusion will be greater.
The consensus here is that traditional rulers who have played significant roles in their domains should be given the opportunity to play more roles at all levels in the face of current national security and economic challenges.
In a bid to ensure that youth unemployment in Nigeria is reduced, the Embassy of the Netherlands, in collaboration with Delft University of Technology, held a business challenge to address the issue. Correspondent Sharon Ijason reports.
It's the first Dutch-Nigerian Student Business Challenge, and students from both countries are excited that they will be sharing ideas and learning new initiatives, which, according to organizers, will address health, energy, and food sector challenges with an innovative and entrepreneurial approach.
The idea is that we're going to combine the technical prowess of Delft University of Technology, which is one of the world's top technological universities. We are usually in the top 20 of universities in the world. And we want to combine that technical expertise with the experience of people in the global south. We want to come and see how our technical expertise can be useful to more people in the world.
We run this program, so it's you can see it as a pilot project, because it has never been before that we had a students team from Nigeria coming to the Netherlands. 12 Nigerian students coming to the Netherlands for 1 week and work together with 12 Dutch students, work together on business cases provided by the industry, and then also bring the 12 Dutch students to Nigeria and work there also together with the 12 Nigerian students.
Cultural exchange, knowledge exchange, it allows Dutch students to get an idea of how business is done here, and how people go about buying things, what their customs, their needs, and it gives Nigerian students the same idea about the Netherlands.
For the excited students, exchanging ideas and working as a team to provide entrepreneurial solutions is a lifelong experience.
The opportunity for us Dutch students to come to Nigeria is amazing, because we discovered the country, we're feeling the country, we're being with our Nigerian friends, we were living here, we're studying here, we were doing the challenge, and I think it was a really amazing week.
While we were in Holland, they took very much care to teach us the basics of business development. We even had a course in hardware development and hardware design with one of the Dutch professors. And coming back to Nigeria here, we were able to bring them here and show them our culture.
And after this life-changing exchange program, the students will be set to present their final business solutions expected at the end of the month. Sharon Ijason, TVC News, Lagos.
Securities trading at the nation's stock market closed Tuesday in green as appraised third quarter's results of key firms. Well, we now turn to Effiong Ekop for details report from the stock exchange.
For the second day this week, the Nigerian market closed in the positive territory. Weak transactions that were seen in the morning turned around in midday trade. Performances by high-cap stocks, especially Dangote Cement, caused the sudden market correction that led to positive close. The common price barometer, which is the all-share index, responded by moving upward 0.54%. On the price gainers chart were Fitson Pharmaceuticals, which improved value by 5%, Flour Mills 5%, and CAPL 4%. Fidelity Bank was down 6.17%, Better Glass 5%, and Airline Services 4.9% in red. Trade positions on this last day of October showed the market cap, which is the total value of securities at the exchange, at 12.58 trillion naira, while the index crossed 36,000 points. Effiong Ekop, TVC News, the stock exchange.
Away from Nigeria now, Zimbabwe's independent power producer Huru Energy has secured $51 million from a Chinese state-owned firm. The loan will be used to build the first phase of its $300 million solar photovoltaic project. Now, the project, made up of 4 phases, would cost $300 million. Construction of phase 1 would take up 18 months to complete, and this will create more than 400 direct and indirect jobs. Uhuru Energy will set up combined solar photovoltaic power plant with a capacity of 310 megawatts, and this will be the country's largest investment into renewable energy. The Eurozone's economy grew above expectations by 0.6% in the third quarter of the year. Eurostat EU Statistics Office says the economy beat forecasts despite sluggish growth. Over the last year, the Eurozone has grown by 2.5%, and unemployment rate has fallen to its lowest since 2009. France has helped the euro area post its strongest annual growth since the debt crisis in 2011. Despite the growth in the Eurozone, the UK economy has only grown by 0.3% in the same time. While China's Manufacturing Purchasing Managers Index registered 51.6% this month. Official data shows the manufacturing industry has been growing steadily, with the index staying above 51% for more than 1 year. Non-manufacturing activity slowed down slightly in its expansion pace this month, although the manufacturing PMI fell by 0.8% this month as compared with last month. It was in general 0.4 percentage points higher than in the same period of last year. China's manufacturing industry this year has continued the trend of expansion, and the turning for the better operations remains unchanged. Well, that's business tonight. Thank you very much for watching. I am Tolu Lokwe. Join us tomorrow for a fresh edition.